Hi all, and welcome to Promethean Bryce. This is another sculpt and commentary video. This time we're doing the character Kenshin Himura from The Wandering Samurai. So basically just going to get straight into it. First off, all you need to do is just put those reference images in, which I just found on the internet again. I could draw them myself, but it's just quicker to get them online, and it's more accurate reference for the actual model. But yeah, like I said, you can either do it yourself or you can do it by finding one online. And then once you've got that, you just basically get in that very rough shape, as you can see. So you get in that part sections. So each part of the body divided up into sections that move. So chest, abs or stomach area, upper arms, lower arms, hands, feet, fingers and toes individually, head, upper leg and lower leg. And all you're doing that is a really rough general shape for the first basic one, as always. So as you can see, on each one on these I'll do that basic and then also a little more in depth for the fingers, just because they're quite detailed from the get-go. Once you start blocking them out, they look quite just harder to do simple from the get-go. But no need to worry about that. You're going to add detail later, or I'm going to add detail. Like I said, this is not a proper tutorial as such. It's just more of a commentary of me what I did and when I did it. Eventually I will be doing tutorials. As of this video going up, I might already actually have some videos up, so check them out. If not, I'll wait for them to come out. But yeah, so once you've got that basic shape, all you're doing after that is grabbing the sculpt tools. So before that, you'll need to change it to a sculptable mesh, and to do that all you need to do is remesh in the sections, the little settings. You go down to remesh and remesh that lower than the factor of 0.1, and then you're ready to start going. The lower the number, the more detail you can get into it, but also the lower the number, the more processor power you're going to need, because it starts to get a bit more detailed, more polygons. So yeah, then you just add in that general muscle shape underneath the body. Again, everyone's different on this at this point. If you want to go straight off the bat and do the outfit, that's absolutely fine. But in my case, I like doing sort of the underlayer, most of the time the body, then the clothes on top, just to make it look a bit more sort of in-depth, a bit more realistic. But again, it depends on what you're doing. If you want to do a sculpt where you have a character where it changes clothes, or you want the sort of underlayer to show in some areas, like if you've got destruction of clothing, stuff like that, for an animation, just make sure you have that body done underneath. And just, again, you don't even have to do sort of separated toes. I'd suggest doing separated hands, but separated toes are not really needed if you're doing a basic animation. You can sort of have them all as one single mesh, and that will also reduce the processor time. Especially when you're rendering, it's going to be sort of quite bad if you have the more polygons. Just a quick little bit of advice here: more polygons means more power. More power means you're going to have a bit better of a computer. And if you haven't got that much, especially when you're starting out, or you want to do like a clean animation, and you don't want to spend weeks rendering, then just bear that in mind. But as I'm going along, you'll see that I'll keep remeshing stuff, because what I'm trying to do is keep this polygon count as low as I can with as much detail as possible. I'll talk about later how for the final sculpt, because this is the animation sculpt, so I'll do one where it's ready to go for an animation, set in a T pose. Usually I used to do A poses, if you noticed on the previous videos, but now I do T poses. That's just for if you want to do animations, weight painting, stuff like that. And then I'll do them in sections so I can move it to the pose later, and then have the pose as a separate file. But I'll explain that later on in the video. So once I've done that basic outline of the body, as you can see, I've started on the face here. This is where things get a little bit more difficult, because even when you have a front reference and a side reference, you've got to really know your stuff to bring it into a 3D sort of pose. With references, especially with drawings, it's not going to be 100% accurate, so you've got to use a bit of your own initiative. Say if a nose doesn't match up from the front and the back, you've got to sort of pick one. I've said this before in previous videos. Pick a length, just sort of go back, zoom out, and have a look and see what's your best option. So go around it. That's always what you're doing. You're constantly modeling the piece and then going back and checking it. Constantly, back and forth, back and forth. Nothing's ever going to be perfect, but you can get as close to what you believe is perfect. Just don't think there is a perfect. So yeah, so once you've got that sort of basic face shape where you're getting that lips and that mouth, that eyes, that nose shape, and that sort of flat 3/4, bit hard to explain on that one, but the general shape of the face, that's when I'm going around the body and making sure I've got those sort of muscle definition in, which with each character obviously is going to be a little bit different. Just keep an eye on that. Apologies about that, I just dropped something. So yeah, so here with this as well. So with the ankles as well, you can do them on the sort of ball joint of the foot, or you can also do them on the lower bit of the bottom leg. Again, it's depending on the character, depending on how you want it to move. In this animation one, I just felt it was a little bit better to do it on the foot section because it was a bit better modeled at the base time. As things go on, obviously you add more detail. You look at the reference you've got in the background, and you can look at also reference to the side, which is what I'll do. Say look at if you type in on Google just muscle reference, you can get it for male or female, and it gives you that sort of where to put muscle. Because obviously, even if you're pretty good at it, I mean, I know my stuff now, and I still completely forget where certain exact muscle groups should go, especially with more muscular characters. Like Kenshin's quite skinny, muscly underneath, so you'll see all those minor muscles. So you will need that reference if you was doing, say, a character like Kenshin. So if I was going to say the hardest thing about modeling the face, it's always the eyes, which tends to be the case in drawing, if you ask me. You've just like what I do now, and with this, for example, I've cut that out. I did this twice, but what you want to do is get the mesh, especially with anime eyes. You want to get the mask tool and draw the general shape of the eyes. Again, pick a reference either from the front or the side. I would suggest front, just because it's a little bit easier to move around. Get that general shape and that sharpness, and then sharpen the mask 1 to 2 layers, and then you've got that general shape. And then when you've done that, grab like you probably just saw a minute ago, grab the spheres for the eyes, place them in, and then sort of model it around from the side view, and that's how you get that better. With these future characters, just because I want to do as much detail as I can, still keeping it quite simple though, I've added ears in these, even though you won't be able to see them on this character, for example. Oh, and again, once I've done that base, I'll add the color, and then from that point onwards, I will add the color for each section. Like I've said before, it just helps keep a general shape consistency, and you can sort of see what it looks like better than just a singular gray mesh. You can also use a tool at the top section where you can change the particular mesh to a different color. Again, something I'd go through in a tutorial video. So I put on this one another face reference for him, just because sometimes it's hard to get, like I said, from just the front and side, the exact details. So I had another one reference to the side as I was modeling it in. Again, you don't need to do this, it's just something I do. With this particular outfit for the animation one, I actually did it wrong. I'm not going to lie, I actually thought I knew the outfit pretty well. From the reference here, you can't really tell, but I thought I knew it better. I've done it all as one sort of gi. It should actually be trousers and then a top section. I correct this in the pose, so the pose one has the official outfit, whereas this one I kind of kept it the way it was just because it looked really good. but it is the wrong one for any fans out there who just want to nitpick at me. Yeah, no need to comment in the sections that I've done it wrong. I do realise I've done that wrong. But yeah, so all I'm doing is on this one, because if it's loose clothing, you're gonna want to say do it as a mesh. So get a whole mesh, model it around, and then select it afterwards. I'll show you that in a minute. But if it's tight clothes, grab the body like I've done in previous videos. I suggest going back into one of my other ones, like my Colossus video, and you'll see what I do there, where you can go over the actual body itself and extract that mesh, and then you've got the shape and that perfect. But like I said, if it's loose clothes, you don't want to do that, just because you've got you'll have to move it around and add creases anyway, and it's just going to increase workload. It also increase the polygon count, so you can actually keep it simple if you do it this way. So if you look closely at what I've done now, I've cut out those sections where I don't need it from the outfit to make it one singular mesh, and then I've gone in it afterwards, selected it, extruded the value by just a couple of points, just so it's got that little bit of thickness. In some studios, proper studios, they'll keep it as an actual plane. But because I'm sort of from the West, and you know, we're the more the Pixar, more thick, realistic stuff, that's kind of what I personally go for at the moment. And I do the same with the hair. You'll notice that, because if you've ever played sort of a game with an anime character, you'll notice that it's quite thin, and it just keeps that general style. And I'm still learning myself while doing this. Like I said, I've only come back into the 3D space recently, but it can be done either way. Again, it's just based on style, and some people prefer this one anyway. And you can tell me what you think in the comments, whether or not you say prefer this like thicker, more proper 3D style, or the sort of video game anime, more thin, plain like style. If you sort of understand what I'm saying. Again, I'm not using proper terminology here, but you'll understand when you see it. So yeah, so once you've got that basic sort of top outfit on this one, I always do when I'm doing shoes or sandals in this case, I'll always do a base plane. So I'll get a cube. I'll get I've mentioned this in other videos where you can do hard edge and soft. So hard edge is something that's going to stay round about the same, those lines, those bevels. If it's got like a bevel and it needs to be a hard edge, always keep it, you've got to do it a different way. You've got to keep it, say, a cube. Whereas if you do an organic, you can round it off with, say, the move tools. So you'll have to do some bit. If you want to get hard edge stuff like sandals, shoes, you're going to have to, or the sword that will come up later, you are going to have to go back into the traditional way of modeling, not exactly sculpting, to do that. And that's what you've done there. And then all I've done afterwards is grab a curve tool and added the settings to make it thick, filled the ends, and then made the laces for the, I don't know if you would call that laces, the rope for the sandals on that bit. So what I'm doing here, just to get those socks, what I've done is I've merged these all together, the toes, once I've got them the way I want them, and then I've smoothed off the four toes instead of the big toe, just so it still has that general shape of toes being underneath, but they're then covered. So it's, again, similar to what I was saying about the Colossus thing, where in that video you grab the item from the oh god, I've blanked, from the mask tool, and do it that way. So again, if it's tight clothing, socks will generally be tight clothing, so that's why I'll use the mask section on that. So with the eyebrows here, so I've done all the clothes at this point, and I'm doing the hair now. So what I'll do with the hair is eyebrows, obviously, then a base sort of top section for the hair, because even when strands of hair go over, you're going to need that underlayer, because it will give it that sort of volume. If you don't do that, you're going to see the pieces of hair through, and it will look a bit strange. You could also paint the top part of the head to make it look, say in this case, an orange. But in the 3D space with the lighting tools, especially if you're doing it for an animation, you're going to tell the difference. So definitely stick a sort of volume layer on there. Then all you're doing with that is just grabbing the, whether you can do this with the similar method to how you did the clothes, or you can use the curve tools to shape out the hair. Make sure the tip sort of squeezes down to have a point, sort of make the middle bit bigger and the end bit to where it goes to the top smaller. And you can duplicate those over as well and adjust the sizes accordingly, just like what I'm doing here. So I've got the initial one, I've got that general shape of the curve with the point, and then I've duplicated that one over to add more of them later, and just small changes in the sizes, because it's only slight changes. You don't really want to keep adding meshes and resizing them from the scratch, because you'll be there all year, especially if you've got a character with a load of hair strands. So again, just a little bit of advice to speed up workflow, and it keeps it looking consistent and good anyway. So as you can see with this, again, it's another thing that's hard to do, especially with anime characters. You're going to get that it's that there's multiple strands, but there's not enough of them to keep the volume, like I was saying, which is why you get the volume layer underneath. But there's enough to make it sort of confusing from the reference. Again, it's another one where you've got to have to use your initiative. So you've got to either pick from the front or pick from the side. Again, I'd suggest using the front and then using a bit of your imagination to sort of curve it around and move them back and forth to get that depth. By the way, forgive me if I'm making a few mistakes or repeats of myself. It's just, as with these commentaries, I'm going from start to finish, no editing. But yeah, so when I've done that, like I said, I'm making some things thicker, some things thinner, adding that color to see if it's correct. And to me, that was looking really nice. At this point, you can fuse the meshes together and use the smooth tool to make it look like it's all one piece rather than sticking out. If you're doing that, make sure you do that after you've copied it if you want to change it, because you're not going to be able to go back on it. And that's good advice for everything. And with the eyes here, I've just got a general, you get your sphere, just times it by 2 on a subdivide, and then just so you can get more detail in it, and then paint the iris in. That'd be good advice for that. So on this is where I'm doing the eyelashes. Again, another difficult thing to do. On here, I've done the curve method, where I've used the curve, set it up around the eye, adjusted accordingly. However, in future videos, I actually do it a bit different. From now, so for future sculpts, shall I say, I'll now get a plane and I'll draw the eyelash out, subdivide it a few times, and then curve it around to the eye. It just gives it overall better look, I think. This one still looks pretty good though. If you can use both methods. So this is coming to the end of the animation version. Just adding that scarring. That's very important for the character. And then I'm constantly changing lighting as well, if you haven't noticed. And that's just to, again, lighting can really help to see if you've got that muscle definition or that face shape correct. Right, so now that I feel like I've finished the entire animation version of this, I'm going to have to join all those parts together. So when it's posed, join them all together, like I said. Once they're joined, remesh them. The more mesh, the higher the number you can go for detail. The less mesh, the lower the number you have to go. Again, this is something I'll explain in a tutorial video, so don't Again, don't use this as a full tutorial. It's just a general overview. You can watch it go fast, see how the process is made, see how cool it is, and also get a general idea of how I've done things. But like I said, I'll do a tutorial later. But you're going to join those fingers, join those toes, join the knees, join all the parts you can, remesh it, smooth it out. In some cases, like the where the join is, I don't know if you can see that bit of the arm. You'll probably keep that the way it is because it will have a natural crease in it. Same with sort of the upper parts of the leg, the back parts of the leg. And then, like I said, you join that all together. The reason why this is stopping right now is just because on the recording, even with a good computer, it will slow down when you're doing mesh. I did a few sort of bad topology on this particular character. Even though he looked dead good in the end, I made it too high. It's something I'll rectify in later videos. Just a word of warning, if you don't clean it up as you're going along, you're going to have a lot of processing problems. So yeah, this is where I'm grabbing so I found a pose online. I've done the classic sort of readiness pose he does. And then I've used those body parts from before, which I've saved out before I merged them as a different file. Left his clothes to the side as reference, and then just posed accordingly each part. And then every now and then you can use the move tool just to move, say, like a bicep or a shoulder, because that muscle group's gonna move from the standard pose. So you can do that. Don't just keep it just stiff, because if you just move the parts by themselves, it won't look natural. So just move a bit of the leg, move a bit of the knee. See how I'm moving this abs and that at the moment, because his stomach's going to curve in, because the natural body shape's going to move. Just again, a little bit of advice, because it's something you tend to forget about. But you just, again, if you're struggling with this 3D stuff, something you taught, say I went to university to learn all this, and something you taught early on is just basically look in a mirror, or take a photo of yourself, or do a video of yourself in that pose, and you'll see where your muscles crease and all that, and you get used to it over time anyway. But I can understand if you're just starting out, it can be a little bit wary. Don't worry about if you made it a little bit stiff, especially if you've got a load of clothes on top. And once you've got the animation version done, the weight painting will do that for you anyway. So I've reused some of the clothes from the original sculpt, the animation sculpt, to put in the pose, because I could do the feet and I could use the belt here, and it's just a case of slightly adjusting them ones. When it comes to the clothes, this is where I had to completely redo it. You've got to pick your moments, as it were, because if you can get away with it, use it. But if it's completely offset like this whole outfit was, you're going to want to redo it again. Trust me when I say it will save you a ton of time doing it that way. If you think, oh, I'm going to have to do it all again, like I said, just a real wise word from me here is, you might think it'll take longer, but trust me, it'll be a lot easier, a lot better, and a lot less time consuming if you do it again. It's good practice anyway, to do it once or twice. You'll always get the second one better, because you've always had that initial practice. So like with this one, like I said, I've done it in 2 different parts, because before I did it all in one, because I did the outfit incorrect. Should have noticed before, that would be my bad. But I did notice afterwards. So again, it's making corrections. We all make mistakes. So you're just moving that around. Similar method to before, grabbing your sculpt tool, making the details that you need to do. With this one, because it's a pose version, I didn't need to do the underlayer of the jacket. I've done it all as one. Use the I can never remember what the tools are called when I'm off the top of my head, but the top section here in the sculpt section, you use that to curve it to make the detail. Then, like I said, later on, after you've colored it and that, you'll grab the mask tool and take that inner section out. You see where these are? You're grabbing that right now. If you see on the screen, you'll mask it, sharpen it off, and delete it, or slice as it's called on the mask tool. Once you've sliced it, you'll have a nice closed section where you can see where it goes in. And then again, whether you want to do the plane technique where it's just a flat layer, or you want to extrude it and get the thickness from it, that's up to you. Over there, and at that point it's done. Now I've done, like I said, I've done this a bit different because this is the trouser version. I say trouser, I've probably gotten the exact terminology for that wrong, but again, no complaints there. But you'll understand what I mean by I say trouser, or pants if you're in America. But you're just getting the general outlay of it, moving it around, constantly moving it, adding the detail, similar to before, where you'll mask those bottom bits and the top bits. This is part of the outfit that I didn't notice on the first one as well, where it cuts in here. So instead of masking and cutting that out, as this is the pose version for 3D printers or for people just to have, and not to be animated, I've kept that in the mesh and just repainted it. Again, it's another case of picking your battles. If you're not going to see it, if you can't be seen, you don't do it. It's a rule that we tend to use in animation, because it's going to save you time, it's going to save you polygons, because if you're not going to see it, there's no need to do it. If you're really that fussed about detail, you can. It just adds a bit more workload. See, in the animation version, you would see it, so that's why I'll change it. But in the pose version for a 3D print, once the 3D printer's printed it, you're not going to see that anyway. So again, pick your battles. So once you've done all that, similar to the first one, just make sure those poses are done the best you can. So what I've done there is I thought I've done that correctly. So I've gotten a picture of his sword, a more realistic, or a real sword that's based off the Kenshin design, the reverse sword. And then I've not done this. Again, in future videos, I'll show you with a tutorial how to do hard surface modeling. But because it's not going to be a massive when it prints off, even if you print it, say, over a 9-inch, you're still not going to see the amount of detail necessary in this sword. But if it was for an animation, I would have done a bit more of a better job. But I've kept it quite simple, just added that ending, gave it a sheath still, because his sword's going to slightly point out, so you want to do it in 2 sections. If it wasn't coming out, though, on the pose version, I wouldn't even have to do that. Like I said, that's where I'd pick my battle. So I had a little bit of an issue here where I had to refill that. You just press an F to fill that gap. But yeah, you're just getting that general shape, colouring it in. And then when it comes to the sort of the hilt and the sword, it's the guard, I can't remember, again, forgive me for the terminology here, but for the guard, you just want to use that hard surface modeling technique, bevel the edges, and then boolean these in sections out. And there was just 2 in sections there. A lot of the time you've got eyeball stuff, which means just you might not see an exact, like, point for point symmetry. So you have to eyeball it as much as you can. Again, we're booleaning the cuts in there just for the sword, and then you're just going to put that in his hand, resize it correctly, make sure the sheath goes down a little bit. And he's just using that finger to sort of push the sword up. Again, if you've seen the anime, you'll understand. Just in general, if you've seen anything with a samurai in, you'll see that sort of finger push technique. But then you got just making sure that you've posed those hands out correctly. All right. So yeah, so that was just it loading off. But once you've joined all that together, like I just did, just doing that little bit of the pack belt, because that wasn't something I noticed in the last one as well. But lighting. Oops, 1 second. So, unfortunately, I did have to make a quick edit there because it slowed down. I'm not sure what happened, but yeah, just a summary at the end. This is the final piece. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. Again, sorry about that ending to this video. I'm not sure what happened. I'll have a check in the settings later. But yeah, come find me on all my socials. Buy me a coffee if you want to support me or buy the model. Instagram, all that jazz. At Promethean Bryce. Thanks for watching.